Welcome back to the Jessica Ash Wellness YouTube channel, coming to you with another episode of the Fully Nourished Podcast, a place to explore where female physiology and feminine energy dance together to shape our life experience. I'm Jessica Ash, a functional nutritionist and integrative health coach, and in this podcast, you'll see that we really take both a scientific and spiritual look at why we as women have become so completely burned out, almost on a soul level, and the real physiological consequences to that burnout. I want to explore together what it looks like to reclaim our feminine radiance and become deeply and fully nourished. With that being said, as a reminder, everything in this podcast is for education and inspiration only and is not intended as medical advice. Please talk to the appropriate professional if necessary, and please use common sense before making any changes to your diet and lifestyle. Hi, Isabella. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah. I introduced you earlier and just said you're so bold and so brave. You always have so many amazing things to say and just a very different outlook. And I want to know more about what is your background? What led you here? Why are you so passionate about the topics that you speak out about? Just tell us more about yourself and your story.
Sure. So I am born and raised in New York City. I grew up with a single mom, but still with a pretty involved dad. Was surrounded mostly by liberals, although my mother came from a Republican family who held all sorts of what at the time I thought were regressive beliefs and whatnot, had more traditional values, lived more traditional lifestyles, early marriage, early children, having children early. And I was on an art track up until I was about 24. I was the art girl. I went to art high school, conservatory, was trying to get into an MFA program. I was just like the art girl until I wasn't. And I started reading some feminist literature, and I wanted a higher purpose, and I wasn't finding my purpose in art. And I think art can be that for many people, and you can do beautiful things by being an artist, but it wasn't my medium. I needed to do something else. So I had started reading some feminist literature, and through that I had been exposed to corruption in birth. Like I had heard that women were getting abused in their births, in their hospital births primarily. And I learned about this thing called a doula, and I watched The Business of Being Born, just like a classic doula story. Like I watched The Business of Being Born, and I was like, I have to become a doula. Told everyone I knew, and it was a bit of an identity crisis. I'm like, the art girl, now I'm going to be a doula. That's like going from one like low-paying career to another one. So I became a doula. I signed up for a doula training in Brooklyn with a company called Doula Trainings International. I did that training in 2016. And before we got to like the birth component and all that, they introduced something called what I know now to be gender ideology. But they introduced it as like the inclusivity or cultural competency program, part of the program. And, I grew up in the West Village. Like I've been exposed to drag queens and gay men and gay women, all sorts of different family structures. So when they started to talk about things like gender identity and shifting language around, it just was like, yeah, let's go. Like I'm an inclusive, thoughtful, compassionate person. And there are some people, I was told, that don't identify as women or don't identify as men, and being, care providers or service providers in this intimate setting, the modern thing to do as a doula, as a contemporary doula, was to not use the words woman and mother anymore.
Wow.
And instead to use terms like birthing person, chest feeder, menstruating human. And so that was my introduction to doula work, and also gender identity theory. And in college, I had read like queer theory and had read about, men, taking estrogen and occupying female spaces, and it wasn't completely brand new, but it was the merging of like, okay, I'm starting this new career and I have to integrate this civil rights issue with quotes that I thought it was at the time. And so how do I show up for justice? Like, how do I show up not only in this like birth crisis, but also in this civil rights issue that I'm learning about?
Right. Wow. So then after that, did you go full force into becoming a doula? Were you kind of like a warrior for this new two issues, really, like what's going on with the birth world, and then also this social mission?
Yeah. And it turned out that they were incompatible at the end, because in my birth work, I gravitated towards physiological birth, home birth, and a program called hypnobirthing. So I taught that program, and in that study, in that program, there's a very clear hierarchy of like what is physiologically optimal for mother baby, and they're not afraid to say it. And the doula culture that I was educated in and working in was very much like, all birth is birth. There's no hierarchy. Like, we don't shame women for choosing scheduled C-sections. And, it's your role to, not have an opinion. You're just there to serve. And so as I moved towards a more like physiological approach to birth, and only wanting to work with families who were dedicated, doing the best that they could to achieve that optimal, outcome for themselves, I started to notice some cracks in the gender stuff, particularly around language. I know we'll get into all of that, but for those who aren't familiar with hypnobirthing is very puts a strong emphasis on the words that we use to create our reality, and kind of highlights the robotic and like dissociative language that surrounds industrial birth, like delivery. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was ever like a full-blown activist, but I definitely considered myself to be like a trans ally. And so my marketing material for the first 3 years as a birth worker, including being a lactation counselor, just had the terms like birthing person, birthing people. I mean, I would be sitting in front of a group of like 10 couples coming for a hypnobirthing class saying birthing people, birthing person. And this is not part of the hypnobirthing curriculum. I don't actually know if they've gone on the inclusivity bandwagon or not. It would be interesting to see what they've done. But yeah, I had never even served a woman who had a double mastectomy and, was convinced that she was a pregnant man. Like, I had never even dealt with that level of like special needs in my clientele. So yeah, it was part of, going more into the physiologic and also trying to get to the root of things. Moving from being more of like a reformist to a radical, it started to unravel. But yeah, wow. For 3 years, I used those terms.
Wow. So it kind of keeps going. And I'm sure you felt deep down something subconsciously was at odds. Like, it felt a little bit confusing maybe as you were going through that. Like, how do I kind of come to a happy medium between these two? Because if I want women to really, if I am for women, how can I also encourage them to do what's maybe not best for them? So at what point did you feel like that at odds? I feel like so many women go through this experience where we're at odds with something deep within ourselves is saying, this is not right, this is not right. And sometimes it's just an explosion where we go all of a sudden, or it's a slow waking. So tell me a little bit more about where that changed or how that changed.
I think it was a slow waking for me. I think, like, if I went back to my early 20s and just my own health journey of being disappointed by doctors and having to take my gut health into my own hands, and being on hormonal birth control just for, I think, a year and a half, and then coming off, and my own kind of like personal exploration, that might be considered like the first like kind of this isn't what I thought it was, or right. I'm not getting answers, or I just learned something that they didn't tell me, and why do I know this and they don't? Like, I thought they were the expert. So I think, yeah, so it was a slow roll. And I think I mean, I used to go to hospital births and just think like, I have just gone to opposite world where women can't birth. They're being lied to their face. Men are being infantilized. I'm looking for another word. It'll come to me.
Yeah, like emasculated.
Emasculated. Thank you. Thank you. Emasculated. And everything that I've read in my books about the physiologic design of birth and best outcomes and optimal, like evidence-based practices, like everything is being flipped on its head here. And if that could be happening, like I was like, wow, we're being lied to a lot more than I even thought is kind of what I came to. I had my own experience with the gut issues, with my own experience with birth control, that I'm watching women be abused and everyone thinks this is like normal and everyone's like lying to her and like she's she's trying to reframe the abuse. It's just like it was just so much. And then through that, I was also peaking with like vaccines and stuff. And another kind of nugget of the slow roll was that I had started helping women come off of hormonal birth control. So I was teaching workshops. I was working with women one-on-one as well.
Just body literacy, you mean?
Body literacy and fertility awareness method. So amazing. I wasn't quite teaching like double check symptothermal. It wasn't that in depth. It was mostly just like, here are your primary fertile signs. Here are the secondary fertile signs. Like, send me videos of your cervical fluid. Like, let's decode this and let's learn when your fertile window is. You don't have to be on this drug. Hey, by the way, did you know that this is this effect? And maybe this is why you have acne. And how do you rehabilitate after 7 years on the copper IUD and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like when you start to really get into the weeds with women, you start to recognize, I guess for me, I always ask questions, why do we not know this? Why are we, why is it that we're learning this at 30 years old or 32 years old? Or, why is this not being passed down from woman to woman? Why is this not taught in schools? Why is this, we start asking those whys, like why? And then what are we spending our time actually learning?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah. And the women that I did a training with these two women who at the time I thought were totally radical and cool. And I think they still are in a lot of ways. And they were blowing my mind with what I was learning with them about the fertility awareness stuff and all the, like exactly what you're speaking to, the ways that we've been lied to and what they've been shoving down our throats instead to replace that. And it blew my mind that this was a space where we were openly criticizing synthetic hormones and the effect of synthetic hormones on the female body. But we weren't allowed to talk about synthetic hormones as they applied to the, quote, trans healthcare. So I wasn't even using terms like female erasure. I didn't have the analysis. Like for me, and I think for most women, like we're like living, we're like embodied or we're disembodied, and then we're lonely or we're confused, we're isolated, and you find you find a group that's like, hey, I'm also isolated and confused. And then you discover that there are actually a lot more women and some of them have gotten together and like written books about the very feelings that you're having or the very concerns or the thoughts that you're having. And they even have a thing called an analysis for it or their own ideology for it or theories or religions or whatever, So right. I was just like kind of learning little bits and just thought, if I can just clearly communicate what I'm seeing and, surely, my Ivy League educated friends will understand.
Yeah. Look at these cold hard facts and these truths.
And a response that still haunts me to this day was, literally the top of my high school class. She was the top of my high school class and a dear friend of mine. I sat her down and I had this exact, the kind of the points that I just described, like the sports thing. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, well, I don't really care about sports. I just thought, am I someone who cares? Do I strike you as someone who watches football or baseball or basketball or like literally any sport? It's not about that. This is about.
Right. Like this is so much bigger.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're starting to recognize now that the truth maybe doesn't matter. You are starting to feel truth deep in your bones, and you're starting to maybe seek other people that feel the same way. Is that kind of what led you to recognizing, like, wow, this is not just as simple as an ideology. This is an erasing of the feminine, or a watering down of both femininity and masculinity.
Yeah, I prefer to use the terms female and male. I mean, I think we
Okay.
mean the same things. However, in this climate of immateriality and materiality and, like ideas versus flesh, right? Like, I think it's so
Right.
important to distinguish that, those two things. And they're both real in their own ways. But in terms of measuring, like, I can't measure your level, or you can't measure my level of femininity. It's immaterial, right? But I can be categorically recognized as female, right? There's no confusion as to that. You can confirm it, right?
And are those terms important to you because what you've seen in your spaces, they're taking these ideas of femininity and masculinity, kind of these esoteric ideologies, and almost like bastardizing them and kind of using them to support their own ideologies?
Yes, on both ends.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
Like,
okay, that makes
on
sense.
both ends. So you have the gender ideology corrupting it in a very like liberal, individualistic way. Like, if I say I feel like a man, that means I am one, and you have to play along. Otherwise, you're a bigot, right? And man for me means long hair, but also a deep voice because I take a little testosterone. Like, that's what man means to me. Right. And I'm so free and have so many choices that I can make up meaning. Like, I can ascribe material meaning to like personality, basically, like random choices of garb and, medications. So you have, okay, so in that also you lose the meaning of word. If man equals woman and woman equals man, then the words don't mean anything anymore. They don't signify anything anymore. If we can't clearly make distinctions, we cannot protect each other. That sex distinction is fundamental to our humanity. We are first human, and then we are a sexually dimorphic species. There's actually nothing more integral to our like lives here on Earth than our sexed bodies. So when we pretend that it's just kind of random or can be changed, it's a complete denial of like our humanity. And so then on the other end, the radical feminist analysis sees gender as, primarily socially constructed. So again, not material, right? So gender is an expression, right? It's a performance of socially prescribed behaviors, right? So the female gender role in Austin, Texas is going to look different than the female gender role in Southern India. Right? Not to say that there's no overlap, but it is culturally specific. And that's not to say that I don't believe that I could say verifiably the only thing all women have in common across class, religion, ethnicity, all of it is our female physiology. Like, everything else is like pretty debated, and I'm not against discovery or a belief that we do tend to be more interested in social connection than men. Like, that makes sense to me, just from being a woman. But where gender gets perverted in like a regressive sense is when it's used as a hierarchy, right? Instead of a binary, right? So I'm all for like, men and women are different. We have different biological needs. Our bodies work differently. We do relate. I do believe that we relate different socially. We have different needs in that way. And I don't think all gender roles are bad, right? It would make sense that the woman would be spending more time in the home if she is childbearing and breastfeeding. Like, that makes sense. That doesn't mean she doesn't also work inside the home or just outside of the home or down the street with the other women or, so there's a perversion on both ends. And so, yeah, so a radical feminist, let's say like a second wave feminist will generally they're what's called the gender abolitionists. They see gender as purely oppressive and they want to abolish it because they see the way that it's been abused to create a subordinate class of people, women. Right. And with that extreme, we've lost, I think, some good stuff too. So, but that's kind of like to paint a picture of, the gender stuff.
No, that's absolutely helpful because I absolutely agree that you're right. The one thing that binds us all as women is that our physiology, and our physiology, what I talk about on the podcast a lot for women, is it's really an exploration of what does our physiology demand of us. It's not a question of can, right? Like I can do whatever I want to. We can all do whatever we want to. But is that what is best for women? And so it's an exploration of what is our feminine physiology or our female physiology demanding of us so that we can thrive. Because we have this, I think we can both agree that we have women right now that are so what I call, they have this soul deep or cell deep burnout. They really resent and reject the idea of being a woman simply because being a female seems like this kind of drudgery, from periods to birth to raising children. It's like, okay, here we go. Even women that don't have children kind of look at, okay, like I'm going to give my life away once I become a mother. And so this podcast is really an exploration of why do we feel this way about our own body and our own experience, and we can't change it. And whether women are maybe subconsciously just trying to kind of fill this masculine role, and we can also talk about how birth control has really impacted women's physiology to feel this way. I guess, can we dive a little bit more into the history, or I see in your work that you have kind of come across this, you realize women are being erased, females are being erased, and you start to explore the history behind it. So you're looking at birth control, you're starting to see the repercussions of industrialized birth right in front of you. You're in the weeds with these women, you're there, and you're seeing that none of these things are really for women. They're not pro women. And I'm assuming, like, as a feminist, or as someone that is pro women, as we both are, it starts to become disenchanting as well. If no one is for women, then what's going to happen to not just us, but as society as a whole?
Yeah. So important to ask these questions and to and then what you're doing, like and what do we do about it? How do you come back into your body? How do you solve your hormonal disruption and live more biologically? And when talking about female erasure and women becoming more masculinized, like I really like to stick to material stuff, because again, it's weaponized. Like you'll hear a man say, like a douchebag be like, she's so manly, she's just, yes. She has so many demand. Like she really it's like, okay, well, do you mean organized or like assertive? Like, right. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? So when it can be weaponized, like absolutely. Anything. So when I think about female erasure, like as you mentioned, you've got it on a physiological level. Like we literally have our fifth vital sign being turned off. This being normalized. Like when you get your period, it gets turned off shortly after. Yep. Like that whole system just gets turned off. I'm sure your listeners know this, right? So the part of me that is required and is essential to regulating my whole system, which dictates my personality, my libido, my creativity, it's just being turned off. And we do not have the equivalent for men. There is no male equivalent for that. So for me, that's just a really obvious just concrete example of like female erasure. It's like the most literal, it's kind of like the most literal one, the chemical castration, other than the
Absolutely.
removal of, healthy breasts. But even that, it's like you could still have a hormonal system intact without breasts. Like there's something about the chemical castration of turning off that whole system, which is really fucked.
Absolutely. I think of like Dr. Sarah Hill's research where she's talking about how it really impacts who we're attracted to. I've seen in my work so many times as women come off of the birth control pill, they start to really work on their progesterone levels and really just kind of getting back into balance and into rhythm. Their paradigm kind of shifts. They recognize that the career choice that they made while on birth control is actually making them so stressed out and overwhelmed and is not what they really wanted in life. They felt almost like their body, like they were just kind of stuck in this motion, moving towards something. And then, of course, the pressure that we get of like, you can do anything, be anything, just anything you want is yours. And nobody is really explaining or giving consent at the cost of these things. And so I see how women, once they hormonally get back into balance, they say, it's almost like their whole life comes crashing down because all of the choices that they've made up until this point is not really what they wanted. And physiologically, they would have made a different decision. Every part of themselves would have been drawn to a different decision if they did not get chemically castrated or have these hormones shut down.
Such a good point. And it really speaks to the empathy that we need to have as, like counselors or consultants. Like that resistance is so real. Like that vulnerability, like not everyone is willing to see or even admit, if they do see it, that they've been duped. It's very, very scary to believe that you actually have way less, like you were making fewer choices than you thought you were, right? That you were actually just given like a menu and you chose one of the things on the menu, but you didn't even know there was another menu or that you didn't even have to order anything off the menu at all. It's very scary. And imagine being like married to this person or your career being wrapped up or you have kids and it's like, whoa. Yeah. And I think, I think there are a lot of reasons why, people split up in the first like year or two of starting a family. But yeah, I've seen dozens of relationships end as women step into their power in birth or, it's just all unconscious, but like sabotage their birth experiences or not advocate for the kind of birth experiences that they want because they know it will fundamentally change the relationship with their male partners. Right?
Wow. And do you think that the industrialization of birth, all these interventions that may or may not be necessary, right? Do you think that this kind of takes away the transformation that women can go through birth?
Yeah, it's just another one of those like stolen rites of passage, like for sure. Another way to just like put the woman down, literally turn to garbage or, sell them for profit. Like the organ that was created to grow her baby, the placenta, like literally erase it. Like she doesn't even most women don't even get to see their placentas. Like
it's tragic. It's a tragedy.
It's the most like literal form. And then, you have what's going on in language and in the law and the educational system. So, we can get like super spiritual about it and talk about like Abrahamic religions and the, suppression of women's ancient wisdom and the shift from worshiping, the goddess sculpture. I don't know if your viewers can see the poster behind me, but I have a Max Dashu poster of ancient fertility sculptures from all over the world. Yeah, and it's again, this isn't like a paranoia that we're, that I'm suffering from. Like we're getting erased. It's been institutionalized. It's been legalized. Depending on what state you're in, you can actually be legally prosecuted for misgendering, aka like correctly identifying someone's sex, someone's biological sex.
Yeah, so it's impacting people's futures. It's impacting people's lives to just tell the truth or say what is true. Wow. So from your perspective, do you believe that women are more powerful than they have ever been? I think you've already kind of answered this, but I think that's kind of the underlying beliefs, that we have more freedoms that we've ever had, and we need to keep fighting for these freedoms. Or do you see that our power actually has been taken away from us, or a little bit of both? I'm just curious.
I think a little bit of both. Like, I definitely appreciate that I can open up my own bank account. Like, I definitely am appreciative of the fact that I can vote. I don't participate in the like national elections anymore, but I appreciate that I can. But what I don't appreciate is the story that I was fed, that my value, it depends on what I can produce, like in a material sense or like in a corporate sense, like how I can contribute best to the economy, right? Like the money kind of economy, not the other kinds of economies.
Right.
So yeah, if you look at like just like health outcomes and like loneliness issues and divorce rates, I don't think having more choices has necessarily resulted in happier, healthier women, more embodied women. So I think what we should be moving towards is like interdependence. So like knowing the women in your community, women's health in women's hands, you know, learning how to show up for one another in the stages, in all our reproductive stages, you know, everything from our first menses to birth to relationship to separation, to menses, you know, making time for our elders, for our crones. But I think it's about like, again, we've benefited in some ways, and it's cool that we can like, you know, have some, you know, financial stability before starting a family. But like, you know, Mary Lou Singleton talks about this all the time. She was like, everyone was broke when I was having kids. Like I was in my early 20s. I had, you know, I was a single mom, and like everyone was broke. It was like just what you did. The kids didn't care if you were broke.
Right.
It was like just a thing. Like you just figured it out. Yeah, I think the way to think about that, or figure out how you feel about that for any, you know, for the women listening, is like, well, what are the results of your life? And like, what are the results of your peers? And, you know, we look at our society, like, where are we at? How healthy are we really? But I do appreciate that I can get like medical care and not be like put in jail in most states if I were to like, would be a rare occurrence, but to like hemorrhage after like an at-home abortion, for an example.
Right.
You know, I definitely appreciate that I could get medical care for that. So I do appreciate, you know, while I'm all for women's health in women's hands and taking back, you know, everything from birth to releasing pregnancies, I'm not quite like a libertarian where I'm like, do everything yourself. Like, as long as there are industries that prey on us, I think those industries need to be regulated. So I thought at the beginning of 2020, I thought I was a libertarian, and I've realized that I'm actually not, for that reason. Yeah, I want industry to be regulated.
Do you feel like it's hard to find a political home? I think when you stand for truth, it's like, is there any political home?
I find home in myself. I mean, I find home in the women that I'm with. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard to find a party or a politician who represents the interests of women the way that I believe women should, whose interest, in the way that I believe women's interests should be represented. I have to say I am a total RFK Jr. fan. There's actually nothing he said so far that I'm not like on board with, which is, I think, rare for this political climate. But yeah, I definitely do not consider myself a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. But if I feel strongly about a candidate, like I would vote whatever ticket they were on. And, you know, as someone who was at the anti-Trump, you know, rallies in 2016 and 2017, you know, fast forward to 2020, realizing that, you know, he wasn't afraid to say, that, men can't become women and women can't become men. And then on the other hand, Biden, pushing the executive orders that just like legally erase women and girls. That was a pretty shocking discovery. Like to be like, wait, the like ultimate buffoon misogynist is the candidate who isn't pushing gender ideology. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Wow. I think a lot of women can see how I love what you said about finding home within yourself. I think once we recognize that we have to take the power back, there's really no other option. No one is going to stand for women like women.
Yeah.
You had said these amazing words, and I just want to read them to you, and maybe that will kind of gateway. But you had said, I think it was today in your stories actually, that many women in our 30s are rethinking the cultural programming that discourage us from having our babies at an age that would afford us the energy and resilience to more easily bear the challenges of motherhood while garnering the support of our own parents. There are plenty of benefits to building up wisdom, life experience, and financial resources before you have kids, but there's grief too. What happens when we exclusively put our self-worth into our careers or accomplishments instead of embodying the portal of life and death that is our birthright as women? So in your work, do you work as a doula anymore, or have you shifted?
I do not. From like 2019 to end of 2021, I was attending women like in a more unassisted way, like just me and the couple and maybe their younger kids or a grandma. So not quite fully unassisted because I was there, but that's where my birth work landed. And then I've been on a hiatus and don't really know when I'll go back to birth work. But yeah, my last birth I attended was in 2021.
Wow. So do you think that as women, it seems like women are having children, later and later in life, or afraid to have children, kind of like their life is going to be given up in some way. Do you think that this is impacting us as a society culturally? And I even think maybe it's impacting our children as well. The way that we used to look at the raising of children as if it was a village effort. Now it's this nuclear family where everything is on you. How is this impacting us, like spiritually, culturally? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Personally, I feel like it's emotionally stunting to not move into that chapter of maturity earlier. Like, not that it's not going to happen for me, but that it's like, it feels delayed. I'm 32 and I never thought I'd say this because my mom had me when she was 35 and my peers, the similar experience. Like I remember my dad was like one of the younger dads and, he had me when I was born, he was 32. Yeah. So I think that going through the process of childbirth and child rearing, like, is just integral to the continuation of our species. First of all, like we have to do that.
Right.
But also, I mean, just like purely practical, like who's going to take care of you when you're old and sick? Who's going to take care of you? Like you're not in a village. Maybe your partner dies before you. Maybe you get divorced. Like it's generally going to be kids. And like I can say as an only child, I had a lot of fear about being solely responsible for taking care of two sick parents. And that wasn't my reality. My father passed, just recently, and I think my mom will live a very long life. But it was in the back of my mind. And you take, like let's just say anyone who has a similar kind of like whose mom had them, let's say between 35 and 40, who's, doesn't have kids yet themselves and they're 35, 40, you're going to run up against having small children with sick and aging parents. It's just not compatible. Like it's just not practically ideal. Yeah. So I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem. Not living intergenerationally is proving to be a bit of a problem. Just like the nursing homes, it's like, it's just isolation. It's really, it's like culturally acceptable whether you have, and in the case, even if you have the money for like at home care, it's culturally acceptable to put your parents somewhere where you don't have to see them like every day, where you visit them once a week. It's bizarre.
Yeah, we kind of brush our hands of our elders. We don't want their wisdom. We don't want their. We can kind of do it better. I think. I think we think that.
It's like inconvenient, I think, is the other thing. And like,
Yes.
I understand people are under a lot of pressure, to earn money and, to provide for their own family and keep there's a scarcity. There's a real scarcity of like time and money that's also very real for people. And then from a physiological level, like we know that in almost all cases, like pregnancy is a hormone reset. Pregnancy and birth is a reset. It's a healing process. The act of breastfeeding will reduce a woman's rate of breast cancer. For each child she breastfeeds, it just goes, she's more protected with each child.
Yeah, I think one of the research papers that I read said that for every child a woman has up to 14 children, it expands her longevity. So up to 14 children, you're just not aging as quickly. And I kind of see this. I mean, these women that have had, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that you have. Like, I think we get surprised, but they look younger. They look more youthful. So we can sometimes just see that anecdotal evidence as well, but the science shows it.
Yeah. And I know I can hear someone saying like, are you saying that women who, give birth when they're 40 are like less optimal, blah, blah. It's like, historically speaking, that would be the 14th kid. Like that wouldn't be number one with IVF. Like it would have been, like I have a great grandmother who had her last child when she was 45 or 46. It was a replacement child after her 17-year-old had died tragically. Like that wasn't uncommon at the time. It was called like a second life child, a second life baby. So I definitely believe in women's, capacity to birth into their mid 40s, but the culture that we're in right now is the culture of egg freezing and delaying and being incentivized to use other women to grow your biological baby and career first and merge your life with someone like down the line, like don't get married too soon, don't make a mistake, you're still a child, like travel, have all these experiences, and then settle down. Like I was even talking about this with the blurb that you read was from a recent episode with a friend of mine who I interviewed named Danielle Evans, and we were talking about like the programming of like when you get enough money, you get your own place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's like
you get to isolate and be alone.
Yeah. The ultimate success is to isolate and be alone and have complete control over everything and not have to share.
which is really not a part of our history. Like never in our time have we ever been this selfish or self-centered.
It's hard. Like I mean, and I have struggled. Like I live alone. I mean, I'm not going to be living alone anymore, but like living with a partner, like we were learning to share.
Yeah.
Like children.
Yes. I know, it's so funny. I had that same experience. It's like, wow, like to coexist with somebody, why is it so hard? I'm in my late 20s, I'm in my 30s. Like what's going on?
Totally.
So, I mean, I guess going off of that, I think we are so focused on what we can produce. And I think we are a very money-centered culture. So it is our values wrapped up in production. But do you think we're also kind of materialistic? And I guess I'm segueing into some of the stuff that you've talked about. I love what you said about Botox, where you said you feel a deep sadness in having been robbed of the privilege of watching your elders age without Botox influence or interference. But even segueing into that, like it's just, we are seeing that women are getting defined by their looks, their clothes, their hair, their makeup, their breast, right? And this is leaking into transgenderism or vice versa, transgender ideology, where what defines a woman and what is the female experience in aging actually supposed to look like?
Yeah. The Botox and the injectables, all of that is I find that so depressing. Having not been born at home, having not been able to watch my, female elders go through menopause. Like I've never been intimate. I've never seen up close and personal, like what menopause looks like without hormonal interference. Like, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. Yeah, I'm always asking the question, how do we get back to our femaleness? Like, another way to ask that is, how do we become more biological? Not in a moralistic way, not because I'm like, think like it's moralistic, or I'm trying to create like even necessarily like a matriarchal society. It's just, because I feel like I'm like, how can we be healthier? Like, how can we be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually healthier? And I just return to like, well, what is the most biological way of living? And this is like an insane question, because we're like on a Zoom, like we're on a digital recording, and like this is a microphone, and I'm sitting alone in a concrete building, and there's a ring light, and it's all kind of a ridiculous thing to ask. But it's like, in this environment, okay, given what we've been dealt, how do we live biological leaning? You say, like,
or as biological as we can. And really, like, how can we thrive with the cards we've been dealt, really? Like, what change is going to matter the most, I guess? I ask that question a lot, too.
Yeah. So I think your question was, what defines a woman? The only thing that defines a woman is her physiology. So, a woman is an adult human female. A woman is not a woman because she shaves her leg hair, or because she performs in like a demure way, or is really good at a certain skill. Like, none of that makes her a female. What makes her female is that she is physiologically, categorically a woman, like every cell of her being. So with the trans stuff, it's the inversion of that. It's like, no, I can be a woman because woman is a feeling. It's not material. It can't be categorically recognized. It's a performance. It's makeup. It's hair removal. It's getting raped. Woman is getting raped. Woman is being demeaned, right? Like, that's what you have in the like pornography fetish. It's like, they are saying what it means to be a woman is to be fucked, like, is to be demeaned, right? Is to be humiliated.
Which is, I mean, I find that pretty misogynistic. Like, that is so, it's a weird way of viewing women. It shows what you really, truly, deeply feel about women.
Yeah. And I think I'm always thinking about my relationship to my body hair, makeup. Like, I've been, makeup for, like thinking about the ways that I've been programmed to perform femininity. What is authentic? Like, what is inherent? And this might sound like an impossible question, because we are just, it's nature and nurture, right? But I also don't believe any woman is like born wanting to have laser hair removal. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Or get a Brazilian wax, like, no one wants to do that.
No. But I hear this from women all the time, and I've had a similar experience. When I started to like grow out my body hair, it was very uncomfortable, and I was like, this is ugly. I hate it. I'm ugly. I hate it. And then it just like shifted, right? Or like, this is itchy, right? It's like, oh, because you haven't reached the full like length yet. It's like, nobody likes stubby legs. Like, it's uncomfortable, right? And it's like, no, well, I just don't like the sensation of hair. Like, is it a problem for you like up here or like here? Like, it's just you just don't like the sensation of hair in the places you've never experienced it. Like, it's new, right? So this is like a big challenge for me to like shift over to that, because I'd only ever like chronically removed my body hair, because that's what what women do. That's what the modern woman, Western woman does, or even in the East too. It's not specific, just here. And it also makes sense to me that like, the more biological we are, the more in our bodies we are, the more willing we are to like take up space. And I've seen this like great side by side. So it's this, if you imagine like one picture of a woman with no makeup, like with her, her full hairy armpits. And then another image of a woman in like a corset with impossibly tall heels with a full face of makeup. She's almost unrecognizable. And the captions are like, one is the image of a woman created by a man. And the other one is just like a woman in her uninterfered state. And we're told that like the woman with the hairy armpits is the manly one.
Yeah.
But I love that, like, the image of the woman created by a man. And so, and it's a spectrum. Like, I'm not saying that, I do think there is a middle ground where I'm still navigating more like, do I want to wear eyeliner again? Like, is it like, how do I make the distinction between performance or seeing my worth like through the amount of makeup I wear and like adornment, or like, okay, am I comfortable with non-toxic makeup? Is that the issue? Is it the toxins? Is it the endocrine disruptor? Like, what is it? And like with a lot of these things, it's like porn is, taking advantage of our desire for like sexual connection and sexual arousal and attraction. It's like the makeup, like it's not inherently wrong to, I don't believe, to want to adorn yourself to attract a mate. I think that's a wonderful thing to consider. But when it starts to require mutilation and, compromises your health or affects your pelvic floor, I'm talking about like the high heels, like we run into problems. So, but I think this is like a icky part. This is the tricky part of like, who am I doing this for? And what is the cost to my health?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, why? I know when I first recognized that, I think I didn't wear makeup for like 3 years. And I've been through similar questions. Like, why am I doing this? Before it was an utter performance. I didn't even want to see my own face. Like, I felt afraid to go outside of the house without makeup on because I was always told that you never leave house without makeup, like I was so uncomfortable looking at my own face. And there was a point where I was like, why am I uncomfortable looking at my own face, how it is? And what being makeup free taught me for a couple of years was I actually really love my face. I want to see my face and I want to enhance the things that I find beautiful about myself, not cover myself up. And I think that's what we see right now, like this whole society of women who just, they don't want to see their own face. They don't want to see themselves. They're so disassociated that they want to just cover up the parts of themselves that they feel ashamed to show. And, that can go in many different directions. Our wrinkles, our lips, our boobs, whatever it might be. Like, it's just, that is where we're at as a society.
Yeah, and imagine like looking like, your face is your family. Like your face is your family.
Oh,
right?
I love that.
Like I interviewed this woman, Stella Parrott, who is an illustrator in the UK, and she told me in the interview that she had her jaw purposely broken. I don't know what kind of doctor would, a crazy person did this. So she had a facial reconstructive surgery on her jaw so that she did not look like her father's side of her family because she had trauma with her father and she got her father's jaw. So this pain, like, you've got the cultural stuff that we're being exposed to, like media and, Instagram influencers and the filters and all that. And then you've got the like, that reminder every day of like what you've been through based on who you look like. If it's, if you have family trauma.
That's an incredible point. It's like you don't want to really see yourself in the mirror. So I guess taking all of this, I loved how you mentioned like IVF and surrogacy earlier, and also just, how we're messing with our face and we're moving in a direction, I guess. And taking it back to your friend who said, I don't care about sports. Like, kind of, I think there's a lot of people that say, why does this matter? Like, who cares? Just let people do what they want to do. Who cares? Why does this really matter? Like, it's not affecting you, right? But what would you say to that? Like, I don't think we really know where. I think we can kind of see a direction we're headed. I don't think we really realize or know where we're going to end up. But why does it matter? To close out this podcast, like, why does the language matter? Why do we want to say breastfeeding instead of chest feeding, or a birthing woman, instead of a birthing person or human? Why does all of this matter so much?
But it matters if we want to, retain the natural world and like retain the integrity of our human bodies and flesh. Like if you believe that we are just random assorted parts that can be rearranged and cut off and put on, and you're not really interested in like living a long, healthy, happy life and like communing with nature, then I could see why this like wouldn't matter to you at all. And if you don't mind being like touched by people you don't want to be touched by, like it affects everyone. Like I'm going to do like the airport example, and also just say that this issue affects women disproportionately. And it's sometimes difficult for men to understand why it's bad because they're not losing as much. They are losing. Like I'd say they're also affected by porn in the other way. So you've got the woman being used for porn, and then you've got the results of the man who's addicted to porn. And, but surely one person is being trafficked legally, while the other is suffering from erectile dysfunction and mental health issues, right? So we are already living in a transhumanist like nightmare. Like for me, surrogacy is devastating enough. It is devastating enough that we in the US, it's state by state. So surrogacy is not legal in every state, but we're getting there. The fact that it is legal to rent the inside of a woman's body for 10 months and control what she does or doesn't do, what she eats, who she sleeps with, where she goes, the kind of medication she does or doesn't take. That to me is scarier enough that we can rent women and buy children. But one thing to note about, the gender stuff is just the transgender stuff is just one tentacle of this anti-life, anti-nature, transhumanist takeover. And I think that the end goal, and the transhumanists will say this, that the end goal is to completely dismantle the boundaries between men and women. That this binary is inherently oppressive, and that the truest freedom we'll have is to, not have sex at all. But we see the result of this in like the kids who have bought into this ideology, and we see them have kidney damage, liver damage. Their brains are stunted. They've been loaded up with drugs. They've lost parts of their bodies that will never be recovered. Some of them permanently sterilized. These ideas and this abstraction, this postmodern thought experiment has a material consequence, which is the mutilation of flesh and body. And so the airport example that I'll just briefly mention, it's like one of our like rights as women is to both our right as the person traveling in an airport and the female TSA worker is that we can only be paired with each other. If I request a pat down, I used to be legally entitled to a female TSA worker, just as the female TSA worker is entitled to only be paired with a woman. Right? This used to be the case. Now, if you have a man with fake boobs who's maybe been on estrogen for a year or maybe not at all, and he comes and he says, I'm a woman, I want a female attendant, he now is protected because of the ideas in his head, right? And if I'm going as a traveler and I request a female attendant, I can now be paired with a man whose birth name is Carl, who's 6'2", who has fake boobs, who insists that he's a woman and therefore can use the back of his hand to touch my groin and my breasts and my inner thigh. So that's like a practical example. And I get messages from women who this has happened to. Like, this is not like a what if, this is like been happening kind of thing. And yeah, for the parents listening, it's like, when your kid goes, if you have your kid in school and they're going on that 7th grade trip to DC, does your daughter deserve to be in a hotel room with 4 other girls? Or is she going to be bullied, or are you as the parent going to be bullied into her having to share a bed with a 12-year-old boy? Also a very real thing happening. So I hope that answers the I hope that answers your question.
I think for most listeners, it definitely will. You have given me and the listeners so many things to think about, and I just love your perspective on things. For people that are interested in learning more about you, I know you have a lot of different masterclasses and goodies, but share where to find you and what you offer.
So my website is whosebodyisit.com. That is where you can find the masterclass library, where I invite experts in their realm to come teach classes. And so there's a lot of good content there, like spanning some of the stuff that we talked about today. You get instant access to the class. You have lifetime access. It's like a deep dive. It's like the feminist pro woman education you will not find in university. That's for sure. And I do one-on-one coaching and consulting. That's also on my website. And then my podcasts can be found on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Whose Body Is It? And then but I spend the most time on Instagram. So yeah, if you want to chat or say hello, you can DM me on Instagram.
Amazing. And is there anything else you want to share with listeners, Isabella? I appreciate your time so much. It's been an honor having you.
Oh, I just love this conversation, and I just thank you for the opportunity to keep spreading the word. And I would say, yeah, it can get dark. But I think the antidote to all of this is like the work that you're doing, embodiment, really reclaiming your health. And that is what I'm also trying to shift to. It's like, okay, now that we know everything is totally fucked, what are we going to do about it? Because it is exhausting. It is very draining to constantly talk about these like really, really heavy things. So it's like, once you have the information, what's next. So I would encourage, the women who are already in the same realm or industry of embodiment and female health. It's just like, you're doing such important work. It's really important.
Yes. And it's time to step forward. Well, we need influencers, I guess. We need to be influenced by influencers such as yourself. And that's what real influence leads to, is empowerment. So we appreciate you, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
If you're looking for any links or resources discussed today, they're included in the show notes, which are linked in the description box below. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the podcast, please share it with others, share about it on social media, or like this video and subscribe. I really rely on amazing women like you in our community to spread the word. And with that being said, I also really value your ideas and your thoughts about the podcast. So if you have any topics you'd like discussed or guests you'd like me to bring on, please go to jessicaashwellness.com/podcast to share those with me. And if you want more content or want to stay in the loop about new episode drops, follow me on Instagram at jessicaashwellness and sign up for my Sunday email at jessicaashwellness.com/email-subscribe. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you soon.